What's up, everybody? Welcome to another World Cup preview here on Touchline Talk. Today is all about Australia. First, I want to say real quick, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you get the rest of my World Cup previews as they come out right here on YouTube. And be sure to go look back at the Group A, B, and C ones I have already done. You can also find the written previews on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com, as well as on Medium. I'm slowly transitioning them there as well. Starting Group D with Australia, like I said, sixth World Cup appearance for the Socceroos, first one back in 1974, and then five straight 2006, 2010, 2014, 2018, and now 2022. Best finish, round of 16 in 2006. To get to Qatar, it was a rather long, complicated qualifying process, so stick with me for a minute here. Australia entered the second round of Asian Football Confederation qualifying, won all their games in the second round, topped their group, sent them to the third round. They finished third in a group that had China, Japan, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and Vietnam. That sent Australia to the AFC playoff against UAE, the country that finished third in the other qualifying group. Australia prevailed, which then sent them to the Interconfederation playoff, where they played Peru. This was the game that went to the penalty shootout. Andrew Redmayne came on for the penalty shootout, turned into a national hero overnight by allowing Australia to prevail on penalties and get back to the World Cup. Players to watch out for, or names to know. First one, Aydin Rustic, quickly becoming one of sort of my under the radar favorite players in the world. 3 goals, 4 assists during qualifying. And I also wanted to include him on this list because going into this World Cup, he is going to be one of, if not the only key contributor for this Australia team currently playing in a top 5 league. He just came off of 2 seasons with Eintracht Frankfurt, won the Europa League, scored in that shootout, and then joined Hellas Verona in Serie A in Italy, which is where he is now. You're going to see as we talk about some of these other key players, some of them do have experience in these top 5 European leagues. But Rustic is the one guy, he gives you that it factor, that little bit of creativity and unpredictability in attack. I love watching him play. And he is going to be, again, one of those few guys playing at the highest level. And really among the core group, he is the only one. So he does have sort of that distinction that he's seeing the best competition every single day in training in Serie A, which is not necessarily the case for most of these Australian players. Second guy to highlight, Jackson Irvine. Most goal involvements during World Cup qualifying for this team with 9, 4 goals, 5 assists from the midfield, really doing a little bit of everything. Played the most minutes of any outfield player. Clearly a vital part of this team. He is sort of the engine that makes this whole thing tick. He spent most of his career in the English Championship and in Scotland, so he's well versed in the English football structure and Britain in general and British soccer culture. He did move to Germany. He's currently with St. Pauli in the second Bundesliga, second division of Germany. Again, this is a good example of accomplished player, clearly producing for his country, but doesn't have boatloads of experience in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga, in one of those top 5 leagues. Mostly coming in that second division in England and the Scottish Premiership. He's got over 100 appearances in both of those leagues. That's where he spent most of his career. But Jackson Irvine was phenomenal during qualifying. He's going to be a crucial piece for this Australia team in Qatar. Third guy to highlight, probably the most accomplished at the club level for this Australian team, is goalkeeper Matt Ryan. He's a starting goalkeeper at the last 2 World Cups. This will be number 3. 124 Premier League starts, most of them with Brighton. That's probably where you remember him from if that name rings a bell. Did also get a few appearances for Arsenal, but he kind of made his name as the starting goalkeeper for Brighton when they came up to the Premier League and were able to sort of sustain and establish themselves as a team that is not fighting relegation every season, a regular Premier League club. Matt Ryan played a large part of that. And again, for a team that is really kind of picking their players from all over the world, not just in Europe, not just in Australia, to have a guy with this much Premier League experience who is now playing for Copenhagen. There was a little bit of a stretch there where he was sort of trying to find that next stable step in his career, which is part of what happened with the goalkeeper change for the penalty shootout against Peru. He is back in a good position with Copenhagen, playing in the Champions League. That also helps. And like I said, he's got 124 games of Premier League experience under his belt, 2 World Cups under his belt. He is very much, like Jackson Irvine, an essential part of this Socceroos team. Breakout star is going to be a little bit different for Australia, but there is only one right answer here, and that is Harry Souttar. Unfortunately, Souttar tore his ACL on national team duty in November 2021, so he's missed this last portion of qualifying and is still working his way back, not playing at the club level as I'm recording this video. Getting very close, though. Every indication is this is going to time perfectly for Souttar to get some match fitness back, to be in pretty good condition heading into this World Cup. Maybe not quite at 100%, but awfully close. Again, this is not a guarantee. You got to see how these next couple months go. But this is a guy who scored 6 goals playing as a center back in 10 qualifiers. He is the bright young star for this Australia team. And every indication is this is going to, like I said, work out perfectly timing-wise for him. If this World Cup is in the summer, he misses it. But these extra handful of months, it looks like are going to allow him to participate. Certainly still question marks as to exactly what role he plays, whether he's 100%, all of that. But this is a guy who was awfully productive, awfully reliable at that center back position, doing it at the club level consistently for Stoke as well. Game in, game out starter in the championship when healthy. He is the next star for Australia. And so assuming he gets to participate in this tournament, which I have no reason to, I'm not at a point where I'm ruling him out yet. So in that case, I'm going to count him. He is going to be a name you should know heading into this tournament. He could very well end up getting himself to the Premier League or another of those 5 major European leagues in the not-so-distant future. Incredibly, incredibly bright future for Harry Souttar. He is my potential breakout star for Australia. In terms of the bottom line and a reason to be optimistic about this team, the biggest plus I'm looking at here is the depth Australia has in attack. You had 8 different players score at least 3 goals in qualifying. None of them had more than 7. This is not a team reliant on one attacker, reliant on one creative player. It is very much a collective effort. Part of this had to do with some guys coming sort of in and out of the team here. You know, Matthew Leckie stepped away for a little while because of concerns and frustration with the quarantine aspect of COVID and going back and forth internationally, and then ultimately did return to the team a few months later. But it has sort of been piecing together that striker position, which can be a negative thing if you're not getting production from anybody and you don't have that one difference maker. But it can also be a real positive if you have multiple guys who are producing, and you know going into this tournament, no matter what the starting lineup is, you have guys coming off that bench who have proven they can make a difference for this team. They can score goals for this team. If it's not working for whatever reason, you have options you feel good about on that bench. Whether it's bringing somebody in at halftime, 60th minute, or the other part of this too is you look at some of these matchups and you say we want to set up a little bit differently. We want to emphasize different things in our attack this game. You have the option to do that because of all the attacking weapons this Australia team has. They might not be the biggest names in the world, but everybody kind of stepped up and chipped in during qualifying, and I expect that to be the case in Qatar as well. The downside is what happens if nobody is playing well? You don't sort of have that guy to carry this team in terms of goal scoring. But I'm choosing to look at this as a positive with this Australia team, at least for now. The other part of this I want to highlight, and my big question, is very simply, can they sort of take that next step? Can they do more than show up and qualify for a World Cup? Since moving from Oceania to Asia for qualifying, it became official in 2006, but this was for the lead up of the 2010 World Cup. It's the first time Australia was in AFC for qualifying. They've been fantastic. Haven't missed a World Cup. Much more challenging. You talk about some of the teams in this region, your Japans, your Saudi Arabias, your Koreas. Much, much more difficult. Bravo to Australia for stepping up and deciding to challenge themselves. And they are delivering on that challenge, and they did so again to get to Qatar. Since moving to Asia, one win in the World Cup. One. And like I said at the beginning, only time he got out of the group, 2006. And this is a country that has never won a knockout game. So you've gotten to the knockout stage once back in 2006. Did not happen while you were a member of the Asian qualifying region. And you haven't won a knockout game yet. It's a lot to ask. This is a difficult group. You're not looking at this Australia team as, and I don't say that as some kind of big criticism that they've been underwhelming by any stretch of the imagination. They are continuing to get better and better, and like I said, rising to the occasion in a much more difficult qualifying region. They have proven they are one of the top 3, 4, 5 teams in Asia consistently since joining. The next step is, can you take that qualifying success and kind of carry it over to a World Cup where you're getting wins, you're posing a real threat to get out of your group, and can you put yourself in a position to catch that one break you need to get back to the knockout stage of the tournament and ultimately sort of take that next step in Australia soccer history and win a knockout game? Is this the World Cup where it happens? That's my question. Certainly not going to rule it out. I really do like a lot of the pieces on this team. And you just have to tip your hat with what they had to go through to get here. 2 playoffs after going through 2 rounds of qualifying. None of this was easy. Sort of what is the response to that? This is a team that is always fun to have at the World Cup. They always put in an admirable effort and have a good showing for themselves. But can you sort of get to a point where you raise those expectations and you start looking at not just being happy to be there, but really trying to create an environment and a culture where you're expecting to get out of groups sometimes and take that next step toward becoming an even more dangerous team on the world stage. 2022, Qatar can be the first step of that and kind of turn the page into a new, exciting era of Australian soccer. Will it happen? Will we see the same results where you come up against 3 really good teams instead of the 1 or 2 you might face in qualifying, and you don't have all of these teams you're better than to take points off of? What do you do with that? Can you deliver against the highest level of competition? That is ultimately the next step for this Australia team. We'll see if it happens in Qatar. That's all I've got on Australia. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said at the beginning, be sure to hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube, and I'll see you next time.